Today we're going to explain the full backstory of All Might, the greatest hero in the world of My Hero Academia, and with the greatest haircut to match. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to this channel as we're not that far off 1,000 subscribers. I do one video a week and would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. Okay, let's get into it. All Might was born at a time when people without quirks were becoming more and more uncommon, but despite that he was one of the unlucky few to be born with no powers of his own. During his childhood, All For One was in his prime and there was no true symbol to oppose him. This is the environment that fostered All Might's desire to create a world where people could live without fear, but obviously it's kind of hard to do that when you're a skinny quirkless kid. During his early teenage years, he encountered the hero known as Nana Shimura and told her about his visions of becoming this symbol of peace. And we actually saw this in a flashback in season 3. Following this, at some point before All Might turned 16, she decided to pass the power down to him, making him the 8th person to possess the power. And on that note, here's a little bit of trivia for you. All Might's real name is Toshinori Yagi, with the name Yagi containing the kanji for 8, which is kind of foreshadowing the fact that he would indeed become the 8th wielder. Also, when he received All For One, he was actually able to use it at 100% right from the beginning. Must be nice. But bear in mind that All Might's 100% is way different from Deku's 100%, because due to the nature of One For All and its stockpiling ability, when Deku received it, it was significantly stronger than when All Might received it. But still, pretty cool to be able to use the entire power just right from the jump. Anyway, a couple of years passed by and All Might was a final year student at UA. But before he could graduate, he somehow became involved in a massive battle with All For One. From the manga, it's pretty clear that Nana Shimura knew this fight was about to happen, as just before it went down, she said goodbye to her son for the last time, almost like she knew she was gonna die. My guess is that they had some intelligence that said that All For One was about to do something major and went to confront him before it could take place. And if you look at this footage, from the buildings in the background, we can see that they were in fact fighting in a city, but from this shot, it's also pretty clear it was an island, so an island city I guess. Perhaps quite similar to the one we saw in the first My Hero Academia movie. Okay, so during this battle, All For One somehow managed to overpower both All Might, Nana Shimura, and Prime Gran Torino all by himself. Realizing that they couldn't win, Nana Shimura pushed All Might out of the way, with Gran Torino then grabbing him and basically preventing him from going back to save her, which of course he would have done if he had the choice. Nana sacrificed her life so that All Might could live and eventually defeat All For One in the future. And this is the point where she utters those famous words, "I leave the rest to you," which is quite similar to another moment we've seen in the show. After his master died, All Might wanted nothing but revenge, but despite having access to 100% of One For All, he lacked the technique and skill to defeat All For One. And this is pretty evident in this scene where All Might is getting a good beatdown in training from Gran Torino. Given that All For One was in his prime at this point, he had eyes and ears all across Japan and would have eventually found All Might. Because of this, Gran Torino ordered All Might to go to the USA and train there after he graduated. That way he could return to Japan when he was skillful and strong enough to defeat All For One. Before he left though, he adopted his master's trademark smile, which would eventually become his own, and he shaped his hair into the style that we've all grown to love, some of us more than others. After reaching America, All Might immediately began hero duties and on one occasion saved a group of scientists from an explosion, one of which was an up-and-coming scientist called David Shield. This guy then developed a costume for All Might that would become known as his young age costume. The two became best friends forever, and they acted as a hero team throughout California. In fact, it was during this time in America that All Might came up with all the different names for his moves. For example, the Detroit Smash or the famous United States of Smash. However, his stay in America didn't last forever, and he did in fact return to Japan, as we all know, and succeed in his goal to become the symbol of peace and the best hero in the world. And during this period of All Might rising, All For One's influence dwindled significantly until he became something that people considered to be a legend rather than a real existing threat. Now at this point, All Might's been a top hero for many years, and he decided to take on his first true sidekick in Sir Nighteye, an intelligent guy whose quirk allows him to see into the future of specific individuals with whom he makes eye contact. Sir Nighteye was actually designed by Horikoshi to be a caricature of a typical Japanese man, in much the same way that All Might was designed to be a caricature of a typical American superhero, which kind of makes them the best stereotypical duo in the history of anime. All Might was at the peak of his career whilst working with Sir Nighteye, but through some unknown means, he eventually came face to face with All For One for the first time since he was 18 years old, and the resulting battle left them both with life-changing injuries. All Might lost his stomach, and his respiratory system was irreparably damaged, meaning that he could no longer operate at the peak of his power. And despite all that, he still came out of this fight better off. All For One had his head completely crushed, and everyone involved believed that he had died. But we know that thanks to Dr. Ujiko, he was able to survive, although his new head looked like an animated potato. Toshinori was adamant that he would still operate as the symbol of peace, as he believed that new villains would rise up to take All For One's place. However, Nighteye, having looked into All Might's future, revealed that if All Might continued on his current path, he would meet an unspeakably gruesome death in about 6 or 7 years. All Might accepted this fate, as he believed that if he was to pass down One For All at that time, there would be just too many dark years whilst his successor learned to master the power. And if you think about it, ultimately all he wanted was to avoid a return to the villainous times that he dealt with when he was a kid. Now, 5 years later, All Might realized that Nightaye's prediction about his death was fast approaching, and decided that he had to enlist as a teacher at UA to kind of find and raise the next successor as best he could. He spoke with Principal Nezu about who was worthy of succeeding him and taking the power of One For All, to which Nezu recommended Mirio Tagata, but we all know what happens next. As a quick side note, Nana Shimura's son's name was Kataro, and if you want to know exactly how he turned out after she died, check out this video I made breaking down the origin story of Shigaraki. And there you have it, guys. That was everything we know about All Might's backstory up until the first episode of My Hero Academia. Peace out, and I'll catch you next time.